So to collect my audience feedback, I of course used a number of interviews with members of my target audience, and this was about both the music video and the ancillary tasks. But I also sent out a questionnaire using Google Forms to a larger sample. And this was just based on the music video. I think that the more effective method was probably the interviews, just because respondents seemed more comfortable, the answers seemed to be more in depth. I think also, although I had a structured style of interview in the sense that I had a set list of questions I was going to use, I did deviate from this sometimes. Like, I would ask respondents why they think something and what makes them think something. And I think that within the questionnaire, a lot of the answers didn't really give reasons. Even if the question would ask why, they wouldn't respond to that part of the question. And so I think the interviews are more useful because of the interaction that I could have with respondents. But having said this, both of them did give me some really beneficial feedback. I really liked looking at the different responses people gave and the different connotations they took. So for example, one member of my audience felt like the ancillary tasks I'd made were more suited to young women, and although the music video was intended to target any gender, it wasn't really gender specific. I think that if I were to pinpoint a specific gender that we intended to target, it would have been men, just because of the male actors, you know, it's about a male homosexual relationship. And also within audience feedback, a lot of them did pick up on the fact that they thought the target audience was male. In the questionnaire I sent out, a vast majority of the respondents said everyone, but no one said only female, so they would either say both genders, any gender, or male. And I think the fact that the video is never presented as exclusively female, but the fact that a member of our audience picked up on the fact that my digipack and advert were for a female audience, that's quite a contradiction. So I think that's a really useful bit of feedback and really interesting to reflect upon and to see what I could have changed to make that target audience a little bit more explicit and more linked to my video, because obviously there must have been some sort of inconsistency between the two. Another point which I thought was really interesting was the fact that most people said that the message they gained from the video was that it normalises same-sex relationships, and that seems to be the general consensus amongst all of the target audience members. But then when asked about stereotypes, one of my target audience said that some stereotypes were conformed to. For instance, the idea that homosexual characters are feminine, when a character brings roses to the other. When creating our video, my group and I intended this to be a point of normalising the relationship, you know, saying that homosexual relationships have the same sort of features as conventional heterosexual relationships, so bringing each other roses. And we never really accounted for the fact that actually roses are not only a romantic symbol and not only have connotations of romance, but they also have connotations of femininity. What I've really learnt from it is that next time I'm planning something like this, if I were to go back and plan this again, I would really need to consider different connotations people have from the same items. I think that we did quite a bit of imposition in that we imposed what our connotations and our readings were. Perhaps this could have been implemented more into the audience research we did individually back at the very beginning with the focus group. You know, perhaps we could have shown them images such as roses and asked them what connotation they got, whether it was romance or whether it was femininity, and then based our decision to use this iconography on that. But overall I'm very satisfied with the audience research. I think that the majority of respondents answered the questions as we would have expected them to. Some of them didn't really identify the genre, particularly with the responses to the questionnaire. I think this might be because indie is quite a niche genre, or perhaps we just didn't make it clear. I think that the main issue with our music video and the main theme that we really wanted to cover was, of course, sexuality and representation of young men and homosexual young men. And this is something that almost every single member of our audience picked up on without fail. For me, that just shows that we were successful in creating the message we intended to create. I actually think that the video is more successful than my ancillary products based on just audience research. Although it was quite a general consensus that they liked my use of text, my use of composition. A lot of them weren't encouraged to buy the product, which, you know, was sort of the point of a poster. A lot of them said that the colours I used, they were quite bleak, quite sad, and that wouldn't really entice them, that would sort of put them off. And obviously I was basing the use of those colours off of the idea that the video represents a negative response to a breakup. The character is obviously quite upset about the breakup. Perhaps it would have been more of a selling point, more attractive to audiences if I'd focused more on the positive aspects. So perhaps constructed something using both of the characters from the video, making it a bit more positive, and also conveying that theme of homosexuality, because that doesn't really come across in my ancillary products and it's so prominent in the video. So overall, audience feedback has really taught me a lot about what I could have done to improve, and there's a lot of things that I really hadn't realised until I'd done this. I'm very glad that I used a combination of different methods. I think it means that I can generalise when I'm talking about it more. I think that doing 3 interviews just wouldn't quite be sufficient enough to give me that reliability that, you know, it can be generalised, it does represent the whole of my target audience, or the majority of my target audience.